After my husband's stroke, he started using a walker. Our driveway is steep, so we installed a safety rail. The neighbor filed a complaint. It's an eyesore. And honestly, he's not trying very hard. We ignored it. Then one morning my husband fell. We found grease on the handle. Slippery. Deliberate. We checked the cam, someone in a hoodie. But when they turned? The shoes. Bright yellow soles. Only one person on our block wears them. When confronted, he said, "If you're going to live here, at least pretend you belong." That was the last thing he said before the lawsuit dropped. I never used to think about revenge. I was just a retired nurse living a quiet life with my husband, Gary. We didn't bother anyone. We kept our heads down. But life has a way of kicking you when you're already on the ground. Gary had a stroke in late 2022. It changed everything. He was once this strong, funny, stubborn guy who used to fix everything himself and never asked for help. After the stroke, half his body went weak. He could barely walk at first. Months of therapy got him to the point where he could move around with a walker, but our days of hiking or even going to the grocery store together were over. Still, I was grateful he survived. That was enough for me. We sold our home in Denver and moved to Lakewood, Colorado. We needed something smaller, easier. A one-story ranch at the end of a cul-de-sac seemed perfect. Flat inside. Safe. Quiet. A place where Gary could recover and where I could breathe for once. But that's where we met him. Hal Crenshaw lived across the street. His house was spotless, the lawn perfect, the flagpole in front freshly painted. He was one of those types who always stood with his hands on his hips, surveying everything like he owned the neighborhood. I figured maybe he was just a grump. A lonely old man. I was wrong. The driveway at our new place was steep. Not unsafe for most people, but for Gary, it was a hazard. One slip, and he'd be back in the hospital or worse. I tried walking him down myself at first, holding one arm while he used the walker, but I'm not that strong anymore either. One day I lost my balance and almost pulled him with me. I knew then we needed help. So I hired a local contractor and got a metal safety rail installed down the side of the driveway. Nothing fancy. Just strong, functional, and safe. The next morning, I was on the porch with Gary, drinking coffee, when Hal came storming across the street like we'd spray-painted his car. "You gonna leave that thing up?" he asked, pointing at the rail. I blinked. "Yes. It's for my husband." Hal looked at Gary, and then back at me. "It's an eyesore. This is a nice neighborhood. Not some public rehab clinic." I was too shocked to respond. Then he muttered, just loud enough. "He's not even trying that hard." I felt my face go hot. I wanted to yell, but I looked at Gary. He was staring down at the ground, his knuckles white on the walker's grip. I didn't say anything. We just went inside. After that, things got worse. Hal started making comments whenever we were outside. You could at least paint the thing. Don't let him turn the yard into a hospital zone. It's about how we represent the neighborhood. Represent the neighborhood? What the hell did that even mean? I started watching him. Noticed how he kept his blinds cracked just enough to peek out. He'd stand in his front yard pretending to sweep leaves that weren't there, just staring at us. Gary didn't want to cause trouble. He always said, "Ignore him. He'll get bored." But he didn't. One morning in February, everything changed. I woke up early like usual and went to make coffee. Gary had already gone out to get the paper. I heard a loud thump from the front yard, followed by a low groan. I ran outside. Gary was at the bottom of the driveway. Face down. Blood on his arm. Walker tipped over. "Jesus, are you okay?" I cried, kneeling next to him. "My arm," he muttered. "Slipped." The EMTs came. We got him patched up, but something didn't sit right with me. The way he described it, it was like his hand slipped right off the rail when he tried to steady himself. Later that day, I went out to look. There was something on the metal. I touched it with my fingers. Thick, black, greasy. I knew that smell. Axle grease. I ran to the house and pulled the security footage. We had a motion-activated camera that pointed toward the driveway. Most nights it just caught raccoons or delivery trucks. But at 12:43 a.m., it caught something else. A figure in a black hoodie walked up our driveway. You couldn't see their face. They wore gloves. They rubbed something along the rail. Then turned and walked back down. But when they turned, the camera caught one thing crystal clear. Their shoes. Bright yellow soles. Like highlighter yellow. You couldn't miss them. Only one person on our street wore shoes like that. Hal. He wore them every time he was outside working on his damn lawn or buffing his car in the driveway. I made 2 copies of the footage. One for me. One for the police. I walked across the street around 6 that night. Gary begged me not to. Please, honey. Just let it go. But I couldn't. Hal opened the door, leaned against the frame with that smug face. You really should mind your business, he said before I even opened my mouth. You could have killed him. I snapped. We have you on camera. Your shoes. Your walk. Everything. He looked me right in the eye and said the line I'll never forget. If you're going to live here, at least pretend you belong. Then he shut the door in my face. The police said the footage wasn't enough to press criminal charges. They couldn't positively ID the figure. Too much doubt. But my niece's husband is a lawyer. He took one look and said, We can wreck him in civil court. So that's what we did. We filed the lawsuit the next week. Gary didn't want to at first. He said it would just stir up trouble. But I looked at the bruise on his arm, the fresh stitches on his elbow, and that heavy silence in his eyes, and I said, He wanted you to fall. That wasn't just a prank. That was a message. The suit was for medical costs, pain and suffering, and punitive damages. My niece's husband, Dan, handled everything. He said the footage might not hold up criminally, but in civil court, we had a good shot. The shoes, the timing, the grease, it added up. Hal was served the next day. I stood behind the curtain and watched him take the envelope. His face went red. He stared at our house for a long time. I thought he might walk over, but he didn't. Not that day. That night, someone threw a rock through our front window. No note. No one on the street saw anything. But I knew who it was. There was only one person angry enough and cowardly enough to do that. I called the cops again. This time, the officer seemed more interested. He watched the security footage but didn't see anyone. Whoever did it came from behind the trees, out of camera range. The officer left a patrol car on our street for a few nights. That seemed to cool things off. Until Hal fought back. He filed a countersuit. Said we were harassing him, damaging his reputation, slandering him to other neighbors. He even claimed we vandalized his property. Said we egged his garage door. I laughed when I read the claim, but Dan didn't. He's trying to drown you in legal fees, he said. It's a common tactic. He's got money. He wants to make this painful. We didn't back down. That's when Dan suggested we dig into Hal's past. If he's really this reckless, he's made mistakes before. We just have to find them. So we hired a private investigator. A quiet woman named Marcy. Former cop. She took it seriously. 2 weeks later, she sent us a report that changed everything. Hal Crenshaw had not served 25 years in the military like he always bragged. He served 9. And he didn't retire, he was discharged. Dishonorably. For assaulting another officer during a domestic incident in San Diego. His record was sealed, but Marcy had contacts. There was more. In 2003, he was fined for illegally altering a neighbor's fence. In 2009, he got into a fight with someone at a HOA meeting in Florida and was removed by police. In 2014, he was cited for harassment after allegedly threatening a woman who parked on his side of the street. He moved to Colorado in 2016. Probably trying to start fresh. I printed the whole file and kept it close. The court date came fast. Hal walked in like he owned the room. Smirking. Wearing some old Air Force jacket he probably dug out of a trunk to look noble. He had a lawyer, young and loud. Tried to make it sound like Gary just fell. That we were using a common accident to launch a personal attack. Then Dan played the footage. Then showed still frames of Hal in the same yellow-soled shoes on multiple dates. Same shoes. Same walk. Same build. Hal's face twisted when we showed the side-by-side clips. But the best part. Dan introduced Marcy's report. Hal's lawyer objected. Irrelevant, he said. The judge overruled him. Said if we were being accused of harassment, then Hal's history of disputes with neighbors was relevant. Hal turned bright red. You could see the sweat on his upper lip from across the room. The trial lasted 4 days. On day 3, something unexpected happened. A neighbor, Mrs. Donnelly, 3 doors down, came to court. She asked to speak. Said she'd never said anything before because she didn't want drama, but she saw Hal outside around midnight the night before Gary fell. She recognized his walk. Said he looked like he was sneaking around. But she didn't report it. She was scared. That sealed it. After she testified, Hal looked like a ghost. He knew it was over. The verdict wasn't in yet, but we could feel it leaning our way. Hal had stopped smirking. He didn't even show up the last day of court. Just his lawyer, who looked like he was running out of steam. Dan was calm, collected. But I still didn't sleep that night. I figured once the trial was over, it'd be done. I underestimated how deep hate can go. A week after the final hearing, before the judgment came in, we woke up to find something jammed in our mailbox. I opened it, expecting junk mail or another HOA flyer. Instead, it was a single sheet of paper. You ruined the wrong life. No name. No return address. Just those words typed in all caps. I reported it to the police again. They said it didn't technically count as a direct threat. Keep your cameras on, the officer said. So we added 2 more. One on the garage. One aimed directly at Hal's house. That same day, Dan called. We might have another problem, he said. Apparently, Hal wasn't acting alone. Dan got a call from someone at the law office, a junior paralegal who lived just outside of town. Said she felt guilty. She'd overheard Hal's lawyer discussing things he shouldn't have known. Private stuff about Gary's medical records. Stuff that wasn't submitted to the court. She suspected someone was leaking. That's when it hit us. Someone in the hospital system must have passed along Gary's private info. Dan pushed to investigate. Filed for access logs through Discovery. When we got them, it showed someone at a nearby rehab facility, where Gary had done physical therapy, had accessed his records 3 separate times after his discharge. The person's name? David Crenshaw. Hal's nephew. He worked part-time at the clinic doing clerical work. We didn't even know the guy existed. Dan's face turned grim. That's a HIPAA violation. And it might mean Hal's been planning this longer than we thought. We amended the lawsuit. Gary was quieter after that. Not scared. Just tired. This wasn't supposed to be our life, he said one night, while I was rubbing ointment into his shoulder. I didn't think surviving the stroke would lead to all this. I didn't know what to say. He was right. A few days later, we got a surprise knock on the door. It was Mrs. Donnelly again. She looked nervous. I think you should know, she whispered. Hal's been having meetings at night. Men coming in and out. I saw one of them pull a gun out of his car. That was enough for us. Dan called the DA's office. Passed everything on. Said if Hal was plotting something bigger, we weren't going to sit around and wait. But while the legal gears turned, we kept living like normal. Cameras on. Lights bright. Neighbors watching. That's when I decided it wasn't enough to win the case. I wanted him gone. Not just out of our life. Out of the neighborhood. I started talking to other neighbors. Quietly. One-on-one. I shared what we found. His record. The threats. The footage. The rock through our window. The mail. Turns out, we weren't the only ones he'd scared. 2 other families had similar stories, nothing physical, but ugly arguments, threats, intimidation. One woman admitted she moved out of fear after Hal screamed at her daughter for playing too loud outside. Within a month, we had 8 signatures. The HOA called an emergency meeting. Hal showed up late, looking smug again. He didn't look so smug when the board read the petition out loud. He yelled. Said it was defamation. Said he had rights. But the board had the footage. The lawsuit filings. The neighbor testimonies. They voted to begin the process of removing him from the HOA. Which, in our neighborhood, meant forcing the sale of his home. You'll regret this, he hissed at me as he left. But I didn't. I only smiled. We thought the worst was over once the HOA voted to force Hal to sell. But nothing with that man ever went easy. He stopped talking to anyone after the vote. His house stayed dark most days, blinds pulled, truck gone. Then he started slipping. Letting his yard go. The same lawn he used to obsess over turned brown in patches. Junk piled up near his shed. We knew what that meant. He wasn't just leaving. He was planning something. One morning, I saw him dragging a garbage bag to the edge of his driveway. It tore halfway and dumped greasy rags across the sidewalk. He didn't pick them up. Just stared at me across the street and walked back inside. That same day, I found dead grass clippings dumped across our porch. No note. Just mess. Later that night, I woke up to a weird smell. Not gas. Something burnt chemical. I ran outside. Someone had poured gasoline into our flower bed. We called the police. Again. They said the camera didn't catch a clear image, just a figure wearing all black. But they were investigating. They had reports now from multiple homes. Someone had slashed a neighbor's tire, too. Mailboxes tipped over. Garbage cans knocked into the street. Hal was unraveling. And then the verdict came in. The judge ruled in our favor. We were awarded full damages, $186,000, plus legal costs. The ruling even mentioned the pattern of targeted harassment and deliberate endangerment. Thanks to the video and neighbor testimonies, it should have been a victory. But Hal didn't show up to court that day. When his lawyer tried to reach him, he didn't respond. That night, Hal's truck was gone. Not packed. Not loaded. Just missing. The next morning, we found our front yard covered in garbage. Raw chicken bones. Rotten milk. An entire bag of soil dumped across Gary's therapy ramp. Gary saw it first, and for the first time in months he cried. This was supposed to be the calm part of life, he whispered. I wanted to call Dan. I wanted to scream. Instead, I started cleaning. I cleaned every single piece of trash off our property by hand. Then I took a photo of the pile. And I posted it. Every community page. Facebook groups. HOA forum. I uploaded everything. The video. The rock through the window. The burned flower bed. The garbage. The lawsuit. The verdict. The photos of Hal in his yellow-soled shoes. Neighbors were shocked. Some were angry they hadn't known. But the tide had turned. Someone tipped off a local news station. 2 days later, they were parked in front of Hal's house. He wasn't home. Or so we thought. Turns out he was home. Just hiding. Police got a warrant after the reporters found damage to the back of the HOA clubhouse. A broken window, same pattern of destruction we'd seen. Inside Hal's house, they found bags of garbage, dozens of court papers shredded and burned in a metal trash can. And worse, several tools, including a large wrench, covered in grease, sitting beside printed screenshots of Gary and me on our front porch. Stalker-level stuff. They arrested him quietly that night. He didn't fight. Just stood there, dead-eyed, while they cuffed him in front of the camera crew. The story went viral, at least locally. Lakewood man Harris's disabled veteran and wife gets evicted and sued. That headline stuck. But it wasn't over yet. Because when they searched Hal's computer, they found something else. A long draft of a manifesto. A rant about the neighborhood. Rotting. About people. Inviting weakness. About holding the line. They also found email drafts. He'd been trying to contact far-right forums. He wanted to spread his ideas. That's when it hit me. We hadn't just been dealing with a bully. Hal was something darker. And he had been watching us for a long, long time. Hal was gone, locked up pending psychiatric evaluation, but his damage stuck around. Even with the arrest, even with the court win, Gary didn't sleep right. He jumped at noises. Flinched when the doorbell rang. The day after the police released Hal's manifesto contents, Gary looked at me and said, he really wanted to erase us. I didn't know how to answer that. The neighborhood changed, too. Neighbors who'd once smiled politely from across the street now stopped to talk. They brought casseroles, offers to mow our lawn, even just company. I appreciated it, but a piece of me stayed on edge. Hal had poisoned something. And it wasn't easy to scrub out. Then, 3 weeks later, something even more disturbing happened. We got a letter in the mail from a law firm in Idaho. Gary opened it and sat still for a long time before handing it to me. Hal had named Gary in a lawsuit. Not Hal directly, but his estate. A pre-filed claim, apparently written months before his arrest. It accused Gary of harassment, fraud, and emotional distress inflicted on a vulnerable neighbor. He'd set it up as a legal booby trap, his last shot at control. It was pure fiction, obviously, and Dan said it'd never stand. But it was a move that told us one thing: Hal planned everything. Every step. He knew he might lose, but he wanted us to keep paying. Dan filed a motion to dismiss. He wasn't worried. But I couldn't stop thinking, how far would Hal have gone if we hadn't had that camera? If Gary's fall had been worse? Then came the part we didn't see coming. One night, I got a phone call from a blocked number. I answered out of instinct. Ma'am, I work with the public defender's office, a soft voice said. I'm not supposed to call you directly, but I think you should know, Hal's being moved. Mental health facility upstate. He's not going to prison. I sat there, gripping the phone. What does that mean? I asked. It means he might not stay there long. I felt the blood drain from my face. When I told Gary, he just nodded. I figured. Guys like him always land on their feet. But I couldn't let that stand. I asked Dan what we could do. There's no stopping the state's decision, he said. But if he ever comes near you again, he'll violate multiple civil orders. Still, that wasn't enough. I wanted to end this. Truly end it. So I went back to the PI, Marcy. Paid her to dig deeper, not into Hal this time, but his family. I wanted to know if he had ties, people who might carry on what he started. She found something. A brother. In Texas. Real quiet life. Lives in a trailer. But a few years back, he was questioned in connection to a militia group. Nothing stuck. But enough to raise eyebrows. And guess who'd sent money to Hal twice last year? That same brother. I brought it all to the police. This man made threats, I said. He planned everything. He has people. They opened an investigation. Quiet, but real. In the meantime, we moved. Gary didn't want to at first. Said it meant Hal won. But I told him. No. He's already lost. We're just walking away from the ashes. We found a house 2 towns over. No hills. No nosy neighbors. No HOA. But I made sure of one thing. We installed the same rail, the same camera setup. This time, though, I put a second camera hidden in the mailbox. Because I don't care how far he's gone. I don't care what the state says. If Hal ever comes back, I'll be ready. It took 7 months before I saw his face again. We were settled in the new house by then. Gary had good days and bad. He was using a cane now, more than the walker. Still slow, still weak on one side, but sharper than ever. We kept our circle small. Just a few friends. No HOA, no nosy neighbors. Peace. Then one Thursday morning, I walked out to check the mail and saw it. A single photo in the box. It was our old driveway. The one in Lakewood. The safety rail. Our front porch. The photo was taken from a low angle. Creepy. Like someone had squatted down in the bushes to snap it. No note. Just that. I stood there for a long time. I didn't feel scared. I felt cold. Like my heart had locked itself up and was just waiting. That night, I checked the camera in the mailbox. And there he was. Hal. Older, thinner. His hair was longer. No hoodie this time. Just a gray jacket and jeans. But the shoes. Same yellow soles? He was standing on the sidewalk, looking at our house. He didn't come close. Just looked. For 20 seconds. Then turned and walked away. I showed Gary. I told you, he said quietly. He's not finished. I contacted the police. Again. Sent the footage. They couldn't find him. The facility had let him out 3 weeks earlier. Stable condition, they said. He wasn't required to stay. Just to check in. But he didn't. He disappeared. A month later, I got a call from Marcy, the PI. You sitting down? She asked. Hal had tried to get a job. Under a different name. In a warehouse just outside of Denver. Security flagged him. The name didn't match up. They reported it. But he'd vanished again before anyone could bring him in. That's when I stopped waiting. I stopped hoping someone else would protect us. I started making plans. I knew Hal. I knew his pride. He wouldn't just slink away. He wanted to win. He needed it. I gave him a reason to come back. I posted an ad online. A fake one. Property available. For sale by owner. Address, our old house. Driveway improvements included. Rail optional. I added a fake contact email. One only Hal would recognize. I waited. 3 days later, the mailbox camera caught him again. Midnight. Creeping down the old street. Wearing the same jacket. He stepped onto the driveway. Stood there. Touched the rail. And that's when the silent alarm triggered. Police were there in 4 minutes. They didn't find a weapon, but they found more photos in his bag. Of us. Of Gary. Of our new house. Of my niece. Even of Dan. They charged him this time. Violation of restraining order. Stalking. Intent to harass. We showed up to court. I made sure Gary sat front row. When they brought Hal in, chained, he still smiled at me. You don't belong here, he said, like a script he couldn't stop reading. But he was wrong. The judge didn't hesitate. 10 years. Maximum allowed. And more, court-ordered psychological supervision, no parole, no communication. Gary squeezed my hand. But that wasn't the real ending. The real ending came a month later, when we visited the old house one last time. Just to see. I walked up the driveway, touched the rail. And I smiled. Because I finally understood. Hal thought the rail was a weakness. A symbol of failure. But it wasn't. It was a line he crossed. And that's why he lost. He thought we didn't belong. But he's the one rotting in a cell. And me? I'm still standing.